Okay, guys, ready for reproduction, part 2, animal reproduction. So we're going to move into chapter 46. We've looked at some kind of the interesting diversity in the animal kingdom with respect to reproduction, and now we're moving into more specific details, and we're going to focus on the human reproductive system. So I'm going to open up our PowerPoint again, and we will focus on reproductive structure and functioning. We're not going to focus on invertebrates. We're going to focus on one type of vertebrate, humans, and I think this is important because some of us just need to learn these things, right? I mean, it's material that we've seen before, but it's worth repeating and it's worth going over a little bit. And so we're going to focus on humans. And here I've got a picture of my triplets when they were babies. This is not normal to have 3 children at one time. It's not typical for humans, right? And we used reproductive technologies. In fact, to have our children, we couldn't have children any other way. Nowadays at fertility clinics, they're very careful about how many embryos they will implant if you're doing IVF, so that you're not at higher risk. For having 3 babies, you're put at a much higher risk. But we sure did have a lot of fun. Here's a picture of my 3 when they were little. We had kind of a gated community, and our poor, long-suffering dog was often gated in with these kind of terrors. These guys over here playing with laundry. That's about it. Laundry, toys, and kids. That was my life for like 3 years. Now they're in college, and they're all doing pretty well, except for with the online learning stuff. You know, that's not very much fun. Okay, so we're going to take a look at, in this video, the male system. And I've got a list over here on the right of all the structures we're going to cover. You want to probably write down notes about each of these structures as we go through them. And also there are 2 pictures, and in our pictures we've got kind of the out-of-body experience on the left of all of the reproductive structures and how they're connected to each other. And then over up on the top right, you can see more the in-body experience, so you can try to see where they're actually located in a male body. So we'll start with biological males have a Y chromosome, right? They have an X and a Y chromosome, and on the Y chromosome is, I guess I should have written it like, you know, they have an X and they have a Y chromosome, right? A small Y chromosome. Somewhere on this Y chromosome is a gene called the SRY gene, sex-determining region on the Y chromosome. That gene is, as an embryo develops, that gene contributes to the converting of gonads into testes, all right? And as this gene, so it kind of determines maleness, if you will. So having a functioning SRY gene means that your gonads will develop into testes, and you'll start making testosterone, and you will develop the phenotype, typical phenotype of a biological male. All right, if you have that phenotype, these are the structures that you're going to have. All right, so we're going to give it a start. Just a minute, my dog is scratching at my door. I'll be right there. Apparently, he disappeared. So I was going to show you my dog, but he must have given up. I'm in my office. My office consists of my bedroom with a table in it, and it's lovely, though. It's sun shining. It's beautiful today. So let's go over the structures on the male system, and then we'll look at the hormonal control. We just want to get the basics here. So males have a pair of gonads, a pair of testes located in the scrotum. The scrotum sits outside of the abdominal cavity, right? So here we're talking like right there. And why is it there? That seems strange for your testes to be outside of your abdominal cavity in a relatively kind of vulnerable place. Researchers have found that the making of sperm, which happens in the testes, sperm actually survive better and thrive better in a slightly cooler environment, about 2 degrees Celsius cooler than the body itself. And so we think that perhaps that's why the scrotum houses the testes, and the epididymis, places where sperm are made and stored. In any case, it's composed of a series of coiled tubes. The coiled tubes are called seminiferous tubules. And so let's just write that down. Seminiferous tubules. Okay, seminiferous tubules. The whole testis is made up of these highly coiled tubes, and when we look at the inside of the tube, so you might see this is like a cross section of several tubes. The seminiferous tubules are important because this is the site where sperm are made. Inside these tubules is where spermatogenesis happens. Spermatogenesis is the making of sperm, or the development of sperm happens in these tubules. So there are cells, and this is kind of interesting about the seminiferous tubules. The cells go through, these sex cells are going to go through meiosis 1 and meiosis 2 and develop into sperm, or little spermatids that eventually become full sperm. That all happens in the seminiferous tubules, starting kind of from the outside and working toward the inside of the tube. So you get, kind of maturing sperm by the time you get to the inside of the tube. These cells out here are cells that are going to give rise to our maturing sperm. And then these little guys, these spermatids, can travel out of the testes eventually. Okay, so one of the things that happens importantly in the testis is I'll just put it over here, spermatogenesis, the making of sperm. Now my dog is definitely screaming. Come on in, my dog. Here, let me adjust it for him. I'm going to show you my dog a minute, just so you guys can see him. Hopefully we can see you. Hi. Okay. He likes to sit on the bed in the sun, or just hang out and bug me. So that's where we are right now. Okay. Spermatogenesis looks something like this. This is kind of a picture of what's happening. There's nice animation as well, so you can check that out. But here's a picture of a testis. Inside the testis are all of these little highly coiled seminiferous tubules. Here's one seminiferous tubule that we're looking at in detail. And here is where sperm are being made, right? So what we've got here is a cell called a stem cell that can go through mitosis to make more, that's good, and that can go through meiosis to make sperm. Sperm are haploid. They have one copy of the genetic material. And that process happens as you move into the lumen, or the inside of each tube. You see that the spermatogonium goes through mitosis to give rise to primary spermatocytes. They go through meiosis 1 to give rise to secondary spermatocytes. That goes through meiosis 2 to give rise to early spermatids. The sperm then have to develop and mature, developing a flagellum and developing a midpiece that's filled with mitochondria and a head that has the genetic material in it. Now, there are a couple of cells that are important also in this process. The Sertoli cells are these kind of big, in this case, purpley stained cells. These Sertoli cells are found inside the seminiferous tubules, and they provide nutritional support for the cells going through spermatogenesis. So they're going to provide nutrition for the development of the sperm. Now, between seminiferous tubules, the second main function of the testes happens. There are these cells that are called interstitial cells, cells that are not in the seminiferous tubules but are just hanging out between the seminiferous tubules. Many of these cells are called Leydig cells. And Leydig cells are the site of testosterone production. Okay, so our second main function of the testis is to produce testosterone. Testosterone is a hormone that's produced in males, also in females, but it has a huge number of functions, and we'll get back to those functions. But one of the functions is that testosterone aids in spermatogenesis. So testosterone aids in the development of the sperm. Testosterone actually aids in the development of the testes as well, and so we see a spike in testosterone as adolescent boys mature. We see the development and growth of the testes, and then the maintenance of the testes as a result of testosterone being produced. Okay, it's a type of androgen. So we've covered the testes. That's an important site of sperm production and testosterone production. Where did the sperm go from here? And we're really kind of following the sperm from this point on, all right? At this point, we're ready to see where the sperm go. They've grown and developed in the testes, but now as they're maturing, they head into what's called the epididymis. The epididymis is also in the scrotum, and so we're outside of the body cavity still. The epididymis is a tube that connects the testes to the vas deferens. So we're here. This is our epididymis right here. Okay, it's essentially a highly coiled tubes that connect the testes to the vas deferens. Okay, and in the epididymis, two things happen. The sperm mature. It takes about 20 days for sperm to move through the epididymis. They're maturing there. They're not completely mature in the testes yet. And they're stored in the epididymis. So sperm are stored here until just prior to ejaculation. Then they can be released and they travel through the vas deferens. What is the vas deferens? Well, the vas deferens are a pair of thick-walled tubes or ducts through which the sperm move prior to ejaculation. And they're moving from the epididymis, they're moving into these large muscular ducts and traveling back into the abdominal cavity. So you can see it over here too. Traveling into the abdominal cavity, traveling around the back of the bladder, that pink thing is the bladder, and heading toward the urethra, which is where they're going to be released. Okay, so the vas deferens are a set of muscular ducts. Just prior to ejaculation, the ducts push the sperm, push the sperm from the epididymis through the I wish I had my little, I don't know, a pen or a highlighter or something here. Maybe this, oh no, that's not good. I don't know what I'm doing. Oh dear, I'm in real trouble now. I have no idea what I'm doing. Okay, let's see what this does. Nah, let's skip that. Okay, in any case, the vas deferens are these muscular ducts that that basically bring that sperm up into the body and join it to what's called join it eventually to the urethra, which travels through the penis and is the place where sperm are released. Okay. One more thing about the vas deferens. So if you are, maybe in your mid-30s or 40s, and you're like, okay, I've had enough kids. Males might have permanent form of birth control done, and that is called a vasectomy. A vasectomy is a pretty simple procedure, guys. It's basically the ducts, the vas deferens are cut. So they're cut and cauterized. What that means is you'll be making sperm, you'll be releasing sperm, but the sperm can't travel through the ducts and can't travel through the urethra, cannot get out of your body, and they get stuck. They eventually get absorbed. Excess sperm just get reabsorbed by the body also, and just parts are reused. So it's a pretty simple procedure. It leads to kind of a permanent form of birth control, although I have a funny story about that. I have a friend who had 2 children and then had twins, so she has 4 children, and then her husband was like, oh man, we're done, we can't have any more children, so we had a vasectomy, and it was completed. It seemed to go just fine. About a year later, they had another set of twins, and so this guy's vasectomy was not completely perfect. Apparently, the vas deferens can sometimes grow back and provide a functional channel for the movement of sperm. In any case, vasectomies are usually a very effective form of permanent birth control. All right, now where does the sperm go from here? The sperm heads toward the urethra. And so what's happening, and this is all happening kind of behind the bladder here, is prior to ejaculation, the sperm has traveled from the epididymis through the vas deferens toward the urethra, okay, through what's called an ejaculatory duct. The urethra is a tube that drains the reproductive system, runs through the penis, and it also drains the excretory system, right? It's the channel or tube through which sperm move during ejaculation, right? And urine can move through this same channel. It's connected, you can see, to the bladder as well. Obviously, this is happening at different times. So we think of the urethra, we think this is the tube through the penis through which the sperm traveled during ejaculation. Now, as the sperm are traveling from the vas deferens into the urethra, there's a couple of ducts they hit first, they're actually being mixed with a lot of fluid from different glands. And so we have a number of different glands that we want to mention in the male system: seminal vesicles, the prostate gland, and the bulb urethral glands. I think I might have spelled that wrong. No, I didn't. Bulbourethral gland. I spelled it correctly. Okay, so as the sperm are moving into the ejaculatory duct from the vas deferens, it mixes with a lot of fluid, and that fluid then becomes the seminal fluid. Something like 5 milliliters of seminal fluid is released during ejaculation. Okay, so what's in the fluid? Well, these glands produce materials that go in, that mix with the sperm, that are really important. The seminal vesicles, let's look at them first. The seminal vesicles sit posterior to the urinary bladder. So you can see here's a seminal vesicle here, sort of sit behind the bladder, if you will, okay? And they secrete fluids that mix with the sperm during ejaculation. I want to write down 3 things. You're going to write down 3 things that they secrete that are worth mentioning. And most of the fluid in the semen comes from the seminal vesicle, like 60%. So they secrete fructose. Fructose is a source of energy. It's a simple sugar. Well, this makes sense because the sperm are going to need energy as they travel through the female reproductive tract. So, source of energy. They secrete prostaglandins. Prostaglandins. Oh, I better write that one down. That's a T there. Glandins. Oh, I'm running out of room. Prostaglandins. Oops. Prostaglandins are local chemical regulators that cause contractions. And we think that these prostaglandins cause contractions in the female uterus. The uterus is a big muscle, and as the muscle contracts, the uterus contracts, it helps move the sperm toward the egg. Prostaglandins. Third thing that they contribute is usually the fluid is alkaline in nature. Alkaline. By alkaline, we mean basic. Alkaline in nature. Alkaline means it's basic. It neutralizes the acidity of the vagina. The vagina in females is very acidic, and sperm don't do well in acidic conditions. And so this fluid helps to neutralize that acidic condition. Okay? The prostate gland is a very large gland that sits at the base of the urinary bladder. It's caudal to the urinary bladder, and you can see it in both pictures. This produces a thin, milky, alkaline substance as well that's expelled during ejaculation. That alkaline substance helps to neutralize the acidity of the urethra. Urine is is acidic, and the acidity of the vagina in females. We know a lot about, you've probably heard of prostate glands before. You see commercials on TV about, enlarged prostate glands in older men and how they can cause, pain with urination or frequent urination. And you can see based on where it's wrapped, kind of wraps itself around the urethra there. No wonder that it's going to cause pain with urination or frequent urination. Prostate cancer is a type of cancer that, when caught early, is typically there are a lot of survivors of prostate cancer. Let's just go with that. Treatment is pretty effective on early prostate cancer. Okay, now we've got the bulbourethral glands. These are a pair of glands at the base of the penis. The bulbourethral glands provide a lubrication that lubricates the urethra for sperm going through it. That lubrication is secreted just prior to ejaculation. So it kind of lubricates the urethra. Sperm can travel through the urethra much more carefully. And it also neutralizes the urethra. Again, it has an alkaline nature. Okay, and all we're left with is the penis, right? The penis is the copulatory organ, the organ of sexual intercourse, if you will, that transports the sperm, right? It's made up of erectile tissue. That can be filled with blood, erected. That happens prior to ejaculation as a result of what's called vasoconstriction. Filling the penis with blood. The tip of the penis is called the glans penis, and it's responsive to sexual stimuli. Okay? And during ejaculation, something like 5 milliliters of semen is expulsed, if you will. That can contain somewhere between 50 and 130 million sperm. That's a lot of sperm. That's why we always say sperm are cheap, right? By the way, sperm, a male will make something like 1,500 to 5,000 sperm produced per second in the testes. And once the sperm arrive at the female reproductive tract, they can survive for 4 or 5 days in the female reproductive tract. And that's really important when you're thinking about birth control, right? If you're looking at using kind of a natural birth control where you're sort of watching ovulation, it's really important to remember that sperm can survive for a number of days in the reproductive tract. Okay, now all we have to do is look at the the hormonal control of the male system. This is a picture of the hormonal control of the male reproductive system. And it's pretty simple, actually. So let's just see if we can sort this out. This big gray box here represents a testis. I'm not sure why it's drawn that way, but whatever. And we start with this hormonal regulation up here in the hypothalamus. Turns out the hypothalamus is a part of the brain, right? At the base of the brain is a structure called the hypothalamus that produces all kinds of hormones that regulate things from sleep to mood to appetite to sexual reproduction. And the hypothalamus produces hormones, and all of the things circled in the picture here are hormones that are produced. Hormones are regulators that travel through the blood to other targets and can cause effects at locations far away because they can travel through the blood. Now, the male reproductive system, the design of it is pretty simple. Once you hit puberty, your testes mature and you start making sperm, and you keep making sperm your whole life. You want to keep making a certain amount of sperm. So it's a pretty straightforward system. There are some feedback loops that you can see, but I want you to just focus in on a couple things. The hypothalamus is kind of in charge at the top. It makes gonadotropin releasing hormone. Gonadotropin releasing hormone. That's gonadotropin, sorry about that. And that gonadotropin-releasing hormone targets a gland that dangles from the base of the hypothalamus, that dangles from the base of the brain, called the anterior pituitary gland. You can see that in this picture here, okay? The anterior pituitary gland makes all sorts of hormones. It makes a couple important hormones in terms of the male reproductive system. It makes follicle-stimulating hormone. Follicle-stimulating hormone. Now, the name of this hormone was named for what it did or what it does in the female reproductive system, but here it is in the male system too. So its name is kind of weird. But anyway, follicle-stimulating hormone targets the testes. It's a hormone that is sent out to the testes. It targets the Sertoli cells, and the Sertoli cells grow and they help in making sperm. The anterior pituitary also sends out something called luteinizing hormone. Luteinizing hormone. Luteinizing hormone is also named for what it does in the female system. Bummer for us, right? But what it does here is it targets the testes and it targets Leydig cells. And it tells them, hey, make your testosterone, make your testosterone. And as the Leydig cells make testosterone, that aids in the production of sperm, which is what the testes need to do. All right? If there just happens to be too much testosterone, there is a negative feedback system that can control and slow down the production of testosterone or inhibit the production of sperm. But for the most part, the male system is designed to make sperm, make enough of it, make testosterone, make enough of it. All right? By the way, testosterone does a whole number of things outside of the testes. You can probably think of lots of the things that testosterone does. One of them is it causes the maturation of the male system at adolescence, right? We get this spike of testosterone. It causes the development and the maintenance of secondary sexual characters, like the deepening of the voice, facial hair, an increase in muscle mass, those kinds of things. And it's largely responsible for the sex drive, also important, right? Okay, testosterone also has, those are all called androgenic effects. Testosterone also has anabolic effects, like the growth of muscle and bone and red blood cells and a few other things. So testosterone is pretty important in the male reproductive system and in the male body in general. Okay, what about steroid use? Is it worth using steroids? So we know that steroids will do things like increase your muscle mass, increase your performance, maybe even increase your endurance. And so there's this tendency to maybe consider using steroids if you want to bulk up your muscle mass, or you want to bulk up a bit, or maybe improve your performance in your sport, whether that sport is sprinting or cycling or whatever it is, right? And they work. But typically, if you are using some sort of anabolic androgenic steroid, you're probably getting 10 to 100 times more than the normal amount that your body makes. And this is a synthetic steroid, right? So it's not doesn't work exactly like testosterone. What's interesting, actually, is people who take these synthetic steroids actually develop a series of side effects, and these side effects are pretty significant, probably discouraging you from taking them. I certainly would discourage you from ever taking anabolic androgenic steroids. It's just not worth it. Some of these effects are shown on this slide. One of the most interesting effects is, in fact, this is weird, decreased sperm count, abnormal sperm shape, shrinkage of the testes in males. You would think that adding steroids would cause you to be massively producing sperm, right? But apparently having this synthetic testosterone around, the synthetic androgen around, causes the body to feed back on the brain and on the anterior pituitary and shut down the natural production of testosterone. And apparently, we need the natural production of testosterone to make sperm. The synthetic version doesn't help us make sperm, doesn't help males make sperm. So if you are taking steroids, you're shutting down, you essentially shut down your whole natural production of testosterone. And so you're shutting down the production of spermatogenesis. Kind of crazy, huh? Probably not your best choice. By the way, this effect is reversible if you stop taking steroids. Many of these effects are reversible, but some of them might not be, and they're a little scary. So, just check it out. Be certain you understand the risks. I would never recommend. Okay, I think we're moving on to the female system next. So that's the male system. We will quit here for now. And I think we're good to go. We'll talk to you soon.